whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, well, I don't wanna jinx it, baby, and twist myself at the spine. Don't wanna overthink it, baby. It's just twist your body and mine. Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're giving me wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight hour. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh.
What is up, everyone? Sorry, just setting things up, jamming out a little bit. How are you all doing this afternoon? We've got Nico, that one guy you know, Petey is here. What's up, broski? What's up back to you? Benzomatic is here. Ty Clark hanging out with us as well. Ty, my legs are killing me from running in the foothills. Seriously, if you guys want a place to train where it's just like relentless hills, the upstate of Georgia and South Carolina are brutal. So what's up, Ty? Hans Wolf joining us as well. Good morning, afternoon, and evening. Good point, Hans. We've got people watching from all over the place. What do we got going on today? You guys know what we got going on. We got Fed FOMC press conference action. Yes, that's right. That's the big one. Toby's hanging out with us all as well. Oh, man. Ty Clark says, missed the last couple of live streams. Glad to be here. Well, yeah, glad you are here too. Bad Brazilian says, hey, Klaus, you're the best. Keep up the great vids coming. Well, I appreciate that. So today, this is how we are going to break it down. Asheville, by the way, dude, Benzomatic knows what I'm talking about. It's crazy. Foothills like upstate, it is just relentless freaking hills. Okay, to put it in context, for every about 3 miles, 5-ish K, right around there, I put in about 500 feet of elevation change. That's a fair amount, and that's me picking as flat of a route as I can find. Yeah, we got it pretty rough out here. Smooth tunes, yes, they are. Thank you much. Guten Tag, all greetings from the Netherlands. Stay strong, my friends. Cryptos will save us. Holland rocking in as well. Alabama, gonna be driving through Alabama. I see you guys there. Alabama, yeah, I'm gonna be driving through Alabama here in a few weeks because I am going to be headed to Colorado to do some really stupid stuff. Yep, 14er season is open and we're gonna go climbing, everyone. Yep, this is gonna be, I think, like my 6th trip in the last 3 years, 5th trip, something like that. I've gone quite often here last years, and when I go, oh my gosh, it is a blast. We go deep. So today, here's what we're gonna do, and I see love from the UK as well. What's up, Michael Henry? How are you doing? Here's the big one, all right? So obviously, we're watching the Fed. We're also gonna watch to see what are the markets doing leading up to the Fed, all right? We're seeing a little bit of softness in the alts, as you can see, right? A little bit of softness 24 hours into the alts. But what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in time-wise, and we're going to zoom in more based on the hour. And the reason I want to zoom in more based on the hour is I want to see what the short-term optimism is based on the news, okay? So we're going to be covering that, and then what's going to happen is that at 2 o'clock is the rate hike, okay? And as always, any article you see in this video or live stream will be linked in the description below, all right? So you're going to, on the Fed, right? They've got this page, all right? And what happens is this. You're going to see this thing right here. See Marches, and it says statement PDF. This is where you see where the actual rate hike is. So what we're going to do, we're going to keep refreshing the page because at 2 p.m. it's going to come out. If someone sees it before me, hey, let me know in the chat. Where you at, Chicago burbs? So no, I'm not in the burbs. Not in the Chicago burbs anymore. I am down south. But what happens is this, when they load up the information at 2 p.m. Eastern time, it'll be found in this PDF, okay? So we'll get the rate hike stuff from there. Then what's going to happen is at 2:30, Jerome Powell will be going on the mic. That's the big one, all right? That's the one that we're all waiting to see. That's this press conference right here. The reason this is important is because if Jerome Powell starts hinting more at the idea that they're going to take a pause, then that gives us like a good like chance. That gives us almost like a good 60-ish days to have like positive kind of like, hey, look, we're not going to get crushed anymore in the market. And lately, honestly, let's be real here. That's optimistic enough for any of us, all right? This is almost like, well, wait a minute. So we've gotten past the peak of inflation. Maybe we've gotten past the peak of the Fed killing us. So looking at that going, if the Fed comes out, Jerome Powell comes out, optimistic sounding, going like, hey, you know what? Seriously, I think we're going to take a pause. Unless something totally dramatic changes, we're going to take a pause. Now, if he comes out hawkish and he's like, yo, look, we're going to drop another 25 on you because you didn't call me daddy enough and you have been bad with your spending and you've been naughty, then so be it. Then we're going to be uphill shit creek for a while. That means more pressure in terms of another 25 hit. And I know these 25s don't sound like much, but in the grand scheme of things, you got to remember these 25 hits add up. And these 25 hits that add up are adding up on top of 50s. Are adding up on top of 75, 75, 75, 75. So that's a lot of baked in change here recently. So yeah, it's kind of something to think about where with the Fed doing this, a lot of it's going to come down to his tone. So at 2:30, he's going to go on the mic. We're going to shut it down here for this, just so we could obviously listen. I'm going to shut down my mic so we could listen to him. And we'll see what he says. That's the juice, all right? So the juice is at 2:30. You've got 9 minutes until the announcement. In the meantime, let's put up that heat map. Let's get to some comments, too. Homie288 says, so I got this XRP question. If XRP, we burn it with every transaction, will a high-price XRP burn at a extremely low rate? Yeah, like that's the burn rate, the quote gas, right? I always like to say gas, and gas is used for like a lot of things, okay? But like the gas on transactions with Ripples and Stellar's chain is super, super low. So like you have to get like mass insane adoption to happen for like juicy like goodiness with that kind of leverage. You would have to have like a Visa, MasterCard kind of that many transactions just eating up through stuff where you're like, all right, there's going to start pressure, mechanical pressure by just like eating through the burn rate. Fauda says, hi, I'm not up to date. What happened on the jobs report today? I have not checked out the jobs report today. I have had a totally, no, I can't say a chill out day. I'm in chill out mode right now. But today was my hard workout day. I got up and, I worked out hard yesterday and the day before. But today was my third hard one in a row. So today I just focused on working out and recovery. So I have not seen the jobs report, but the market being green like this now would tell me that the jobs report came in favorable. I mean, that would just be my guess. Chaz Jones says, Klaus is in the house. Looking forward to the show 100%. Thank you so much, Chaz Jones. Yeah, let me know also where y'all are viewing from. I got caught up with a whole bunch of those. General Splatoon says, please tell me there's no chance of 50. No way you're getting a 50. No freaking way you get a 50. No way in hell. And here, let's bring that up, okay? Let's bring that up. And here's why. I'll show you what I'm talking about with this. And we could also do this for the UK fans as well. But here's the inflation chart right here, all right? This last change that we had from February to March's data, all right, was really, really good. That change from 6 to 5, that delta point, this was the biggest jump down that we've seen. Because we had that massive jump down, that eliminated the idea of the 50. You got MEP hanging out with us saying Bloomberg just posted it's most probably going to be a 25. Yeah, this is how it plays out. If it's a 0, if they pause here, markets are going to frickin' roar. If it's a 25, markets already have based this in. Then what happens is we put the pressure and the oomph on what his statements are. And you could look at it right now. Markets right now over the last hour are definitely looking a little bit more optimistic. Because we're all knowing it right now. We're all thinking it. Right now, in terms of the odds from the CME, the people that bet on this, 88% chance that we're getting a quarter hit. 88%. Chaz Jones repping from Mid-South, Fort Smith, Arkansas. Rock on. Hey, Jeezy just said, ordered 10 pounds of protein before inflation. Very smart. Very, very smart. Yeah, I do. I go through a lot of protein subs with my training. One of the big reasons why I use protein supplements is to make sure that I get that extra recovery meal that's heavy protein based. And I also add it to a lot of cooking. I cook with protein powder, so like I'll swap out flour for protein powder, like with pancakes. I make the sludge bowls all the time with protein powder, mix it up with Greek yogurt, frozen fruit, like frozen berries and stuff. Oh man, that's so good. Totally good. AKA Payne says, is it true Michael Saylor is selling his Bitcoin? You know, I haven't... What's up, Arnold? I see you. I see you there. AKA Payne says, is it true Michael Saylor is selling his Bitcoin? I saw something about that. And what I was reading about that had to do with, like, his planned positions that he was trying... that his planned positions that he would have had to have been declaring with the SEC. Now, you can do that. Here, I'll show you real quick how to do that. We're going to go to Edgar, and we've got 5 minutes. All right, so when you go to Edgar, you can go to MicroStrategy. Let me see. So here's MicroStrategy, okay, MSTR. And what you can do is you can look through their filings, all right? And you can look through their filings on their reports. You could also, because remember, this is a publicly traded company, so anything he does, like, he has to kind of put it out there. So you can go through all this stuff and actually see what it is that they're doing, right? We've entered into a sales agreement with Cohen and Company, blah, 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 collectively. So, I mean, they have all these different ones. You'll just have to go through it. And like I said, it's what's cool about, like, the stock stuff. What's up, Trade Trillionaire? I see you. What's cool about the stock stuff is that, like, all of these reports are public. So if someone is selling, if an insider is selling, you know about it. You know also about their financials. Like their 10Q right here. So they have a 10Q, which is their quarterly report. So you could see what their holdings are too. Their cash equivalents, stuff like that. I mean, you could see how much stronger their cash and cash equivalents are right now. In fact, their assets, we've got 4 more minutes. Yeah, no problem, AKA Payne. You can also see, like, in terms of their total assets, see they have a digital asset pool right here. Their digital asset pool right now, let me put, hold on a second here. Sorry, I'm just doing this on the fly just to help you all out. Their digital asset pool is this right here. So you can kind of see what they have. And remember, these are done in thousands, okay? So you know how this is 2 million? This is actually 2 billion worth of digital assets. Fed meeting. All right, so there's 2 things. Fed decision is happening at 2 p.m. That's covered in this screen right here. The Fed actual rate hike talking, where I think the big action is going to happen, is at 2:30, Travis Striggle. Let's see. What else do we got going on with everyone? Screw Sailor. I like that. I'm cool with that. Thank you, Ty, for helping us out in the chat. Yeah, guys, don't worry. You can also use the chat as well as a tool. Works very good. Thank you, Ty, for helping out with that. Whew. Okay, but yeah, that's kind of the one thing. I actually was talking to Twitch earlier about this. I'm sure you guys have seen Twitch in the chat plenty of times. So I was talking to him earlier about this today and yesterday too. That one of the reasons why I really, really like stock securities is because of the openness of the data that I get. So like with MicroStrategy, if he's going to start dumping it, he has to start filing all this stuff. Like, you know what's happening. It works really, really well. And you just get a lot of good data. And you'll often get like operational reports tied in too, which really, really help you out. Especially what's interesting to see about it is, you know, their profit margins. You could see here, cost of revenue. How much money did it cost them to actually make that money? Their shares. I mean, you could really go through a whole bunch of cool data in these publicly traded companies. So that's kind of why I wish we were getting a little bit more open with crypto. Like, we would see actual better numbers, because I think a lot of it's faked out. I mean, AKA Payne says, I mean, I own XLM and XRP. I was just wondering, we can't Phoenix without flames. Yeah, no, totally get you. We have also got that covered too. I've got gold covered on the screen. Reason I got gold covered, gold broke yesterday first, all right? Gold broke yesterday, and now I'm wondering if the digital assets are going to follow suit, or if the digital assets are going are going to pause. My thing is this: if the physical assets are going to move, right? If your physical assets are going to move harder, I think you're going to see It's for me, it's balance sheet too. I don't want to get off on like a tangent here, but for me, it's balance sheet too. That scares me. So you've got rate hikes is a big thing, but also balance sheet from the Fed. But anyways, as I was saying earlier, yeah, I saw gold move. That's why I've got that caught up here. You could see gold made the pop yesterday, and since then it has gone on an absolute tear. So I was kind of waiting to see if we would see the same action with XLM XRP start moving, but we're still trending on that downside. PD Pure hitting us, and guys, anytime you donate to the channel, the stream, super chat or super sticker, I'm not sure. It doesn't tell me on here. It tells me at the end. So thank you, PD Pure. Make sure you guys thank PD Pure for supporting the channel. PD Pure says, I appreciate you, broski. It's hard for truck drivers to get this info you demand. No, thank you so much. And if there's ways that I can improve, everyone, please let me know. Like, and let me know too if you guys and gals also like. Is it more audio based? Do you get information? Do the visuals here help? Let me know. Glenn says, if they do the 25 basis point hit, are more banks going to collapse? Yeah, you know what? Okay, again, the 25 basis point hit also affects the bond gap. All right? That's the big problem with these banks. Speaking of banks, let's get some news in here. What about PacWest and other regional bank stocks fall further? That's right. PacWest is in trouble. Why? You got JP Morgan snagging stuff up. All right, let's see. Let's go to the Fed. Let's see what we got for the hit. I am going to read it to you right now. The U.S. banking system is sound and resilient. Tighter credit conditions for households and businesses are likely to weigh on economic activity, hiring, and inflation. The committee seeks to achieve maximum employment and efficient rate at 2% in the long run. In order to support these goals, the committee decided to raise it. There you go, everyone. We've got the raise. We did it. That's it, right? This is what was planned. They raised the Fed funds rate to 5.25%. Ty Clark dropping us in. Everyone, please give Ty a big thank you as well. Ty says, yeah, bro, much love. I can't stick around long after, so thank you. No, thank you, Ty. And seriously, Ty, these hills are just seriously destroying me, man. Like, they're rough, but they're great for training. So, yes, we did get the hit, and everyone, please say a thank you to PD Pure and Ty. We came in at the 25-point hit. If you want to see where this information be found, you can go on the Federal Reserve site where I was just at, and you can go in their press release. So that is it right now. We are at the action, and we're going to take a look now at markets to see what's happening. Yes, thank you, PD Pure, for helping us out, and everyone, thank you for thanking people as well, because that means a lot too. Common courtesy, respect, and good manners are always welcome as well. Ty Clark says, yes, sir, and they are in peace, y'all. Yeah, and Ty, let's hope that we stop the wind up here, too, man. We need some good weather. I need to go up to the river here soon and hang out and do a little bit of swimming. Mep says gold is pumping. I got gold up on the screen, dude. Let's see what's happening with gold. All right, we got some juice here. Let's see if anything is moving on the XRP and XLM action. Actually, let's zoom in just a little bit more, and let's make this a 5 minute so we can actually see what we got going on here. Are we going to Caracas, Venezuela, or is Venezuela coming to us? Oh, depends. Depends. All right, so let's see. What do we got going on right now? We're going to look at the heat map and see. We're probably going to be green entering into Jerome Powell, all right? Jerome Powell speech. That happens at 2:30. So we've got 27 minutes for Jerome Powell to come on. So this is your time, everyone. This is your time. This is your show. I have stuff here. Don't get me wrong. I've got a whole bunch of news stories here to fill time if there's dead air. But the reality is I want to support you. So you tell me what's on your mind. What do you want to talk about? We've got 27 minutes. All right? Let me know what's on your mind, what questions you have. Glenn says, so we're going to go up the weekend, more banks will go down in the coming days. If banks go down because of bond gap issues, people are going to have fear of putting their money in banks. So then you have to start putting your money in other assets. That's one of the reasons why gold is moving big time. It has to do with people putting their money in safe haven. Now, what's interesting about that is we saw that the market will react to this as well, and that we even saw in the last banking disaster when it was announced that crypto moved. That was very, very interesting to see. So what I'm sitting here thinking is, all right, you still need liquidity though. That's the main thing you need right now for the markets to move. All right, Glenn, that's number one. You will get movement on bank bad news, right? That's true. But you still need money. The problem is, Glenn, is that money now just got a quarter point more expensive. So now where money was scarce because it was already eaten up by inflation, high interest rates on your loans, home loans, auto loans, right? Home equity line of credit, business loans. So what happens is now is all that stuff is more expensive. You're spending more money on interest, which means you're not putting money into crypto. And in the US right now, the big money engine, and actually in a lot of the world, the big money engine of business institutional investment is being held back because we just don't have the regs yet. And 25 basis points is the hit. 25 is the hit. Steve says Chinese or curry tonight. Dude, if you could do yellow chicken, if you look that up, Steve, yellow chicken, white rice, it's like a mayo and curry sauce mixed with white rice and chicken. Oh my God, look it up. Yellow chicken, man. It is really good. It is very up there in terms of like the calories, so you can use some substitutes, but it is legit good, man. Check it out. But yes, 25 basis point is the hit. I've got it up on here on the screen. Fed announcement. We're looking at the markets right now. XRP sitting at 45.4 with Doge not moving too much either. We've got, it looks like the market right now is going to be holding sideways until Jerome Powell gets on the mic. Because nothing is popping as in a deeper green, and I've got this zoomed in on the hour. So we're really kind of zoomed into really any kind of micro movements on the market right now, and we're not seeing them yet. Gold a little bit of sideways. Nope, gold is making a move on the way down right here. All right, so we've got gold that kind of retraced just a little bit. We've got cryptos kind of still within that range-bound action. Don't see too much on XRP or XLM. Michael 02 says interest rates may go up in June. God, I hope not. No, this is where we take a pause, Michael. We got to take a pause now. You can't just keep hitting quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter. You can't do it. I mean, you can technically, but the problem is the damage it does to people wanting to buy cars and homes is just destructive in terms of how fast the rates went up. And then you increase the bond gap. Brad says the alts are going to run like crazy in the next couple of months. What if we want things to run in this market, you're going to need liquidity. The other thing you're going to need, Brad, and I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you, Brad. But the one thing that I looked up, or that we have to pay attention to, I've got it, hold on, is now all of a sudden you're seeing that the volume is going to PayPay coin. And dude, it's meme stuff. Like, I don't want to cover it, like in terms of like covering the coin, but like as a news story, like I'm watching like exchanges that were exchanges that were trading XRP super high on volume, replace XRP volume with PayPay action. The exchange doesn't give a crap. They're like, oh cool, we're making money no matter what you trade. They don't care if you're trading high volume PayPay, high volume XRP, high volume whatever. You know? The issue here though is that there's only so much money to go around, and right now meme is stealing it, and that's what's really scary. That's what's very, very scary. Oh, they asked, when's the bull run? I need a Lambo. When money gets cheap again. When money gets cheap. Money won't be cheap for a while. And crypto is very speculative, right? Web3 building and development is very speculative. It's very risky. There's a lot of flops, right? So like if you're an investor, and let's talk about that, okay? If you're an investor, you're looking at this and you're like, I've heard of all these crypto projects that have failed. I know there's regulation issues. We don't have good regs all across the globe. There's blah, 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 stuff like that, right? So if we start looking at it that way, you're going to have that money kind of hold back. That money is also super expensive right now. Money is crazy expensive because the Fed keeps jacking up rates. So now it's risky and expensive. You can't run unless risky and expensive become not so risky and not expensive. You can't just turn the faucet on while shit's expensive. That would be like saying with the high interest credit card, you're just going to say F it and buy lotto tickets. You will go broke within a month, 2 months, 3 months, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what they're looking at right now, market-wise and capital-wise. So for the markets to run, you need money to become cheaper, which means rates have to start coming back down. And you also need the risk, right? The risk profile of it to start peeling back a little bit. Yes, they did announce it. It was a 25 basis point hit. Michael O2 says, if they do put the interest rate up in June, then you will see blood in the streets. Yeah, if they come back, all right? If they come back with, if they come back with another hit in June, ooh, is that going to stunt the market and go red? Oh my gosh, because that just made money more expensive long term and pushes everything out even further. Oh, horrible. Massimo says, hey, Ope, I heard many people say it's priced in. Can you explain that phrase, what's priced in? What's priced in is the expectation, okay? So I follow a lot of stuff like that deals with like statistical trends, okay? And what is interesting is it's the trend, it's the movement, it's the way things are going. There's snapshot data points, right? But then there's the trends that are the data points that build into it, okay? So priced in essentially means we knew this was going to happen from the Fed, all right? We knew it. We're pricing it in. We sold off ahead of time. We peeled back, right, from like a few weeks ago. We've kind of sat here, right? We're like, okay, we knew this is going to be a quarter. This wasn't going to be good news. You know, so that information has been priced in. Now, if all of a sudden Jerome Powell and the Fed would have come out and paused and said, no, we're going to pause this time around, then all of a sudden, right, all that negative information priced in, that because they paused would have been a deviation, you would have seen the markets rally like that. So that's what priced in means. PD Pure says, did you see PayPay that the slippage is crazy on sells? PD, I've seen too. By the way, everyone, thank PD again. Thank you, PD. By the way, PD, what I saw regarding PayPay, and I have not been able to confirm it, was that the dev wallets were dumping it as well. So as people were buying it, the dev wallets were dumping it. DeFi Joker says, blow off top and stocks incoming. But good buying ops for the right digital assets. Very, very true. No worries, Massimo. Glad I could help you out. Give me 1 second here. I need to check my personal action super fast here. Hold on a second. I got a few things that I have to pay very close attention to. So, okay, I'm cool. All right. Let's see. DeFi Joker's I've been long the VIX volatility action. Love it. Last week got in at 16, about to close it out. But and thank you, DeFi Joker. I've been full disclosure here. I've really been starting to pull back on gold and gold peripherals and derivatives. And so I've pulled back. Now I'm at 15% that I've sold off here in the last several days regarding gold. Over the last month, I'm under 20%. I'm under 20%. I'm like 17 to 18, right, really close around there. So yeah, the Fed, Emmanuel Cote says the Fed shouldn't be predictable. The thing is, though, is that everything is predictable because there's data, trends, and stats, right? It's not that the statement goes like this. You still got to play the game, right? I understand, right? Like if the Tom Brady Patriots were to play the Jay Cutler Bears, the Tom Brady Patriots would beat the Bears 99 times out of 100, but you still got to play the game, right? You still got to play it. Only one time in my career as a trader have they surprised, and that was a rate cut in 2000, caused massive panic. Yeah, the market gets pretty good at this, and what you could do is you could follow these trends as well. And what's really cool is, you could get really heavy into the data points, but you could see that this action, quote, quote, was priced in a long time. Even a week ago, we were looking at 72.2. So you even had some of those bears out there really pulling back quite heavily. So just interesting data just for everyone to take a look at. But right now we're looking to see what Jerome Powell and the Fed have to say for this meeting. I don't expect any movement until we get him talking more about, is he going to be bearish regarding stuff? Is he going to be bullish regarding, are they going to pause? What are they going to be hinting to? Just made it quick, 200 on a short took. Now we'll wait for Powell. Good for you. Blockchain Finance Value. Yeah, I have been in the green on gold stuff for a while, and I have been pounding it, man. I've just been watching and just doing hit after hit after hit because I'm past the long-term stuff or short-term cap gains junk. So yeah, it's just the market is timing this very interestingly, and what I really was curious about was the move that gold made early ahead of everything. I mean, this move right here, that was crazy. DeFi Joker says the Ripple case not over soon. That's a pretty good thing. Yeah. Okay, thank you for bringing that up, DeFi Joker. Something I wanted to bring up as well that has to do with this. Give me a second. Which article is that? I have so freaking many up here. Yeah, okay. Is it me, or is there just like a massive amount of people, news outlets, Twitter influencers that just pump just absolute complete lies about XRP? I mean, oh my gosh, like I kid you not, there's so many things out there that are like these crazy like hopium, crazy moonshot things that people are like, yo, people, this has to stop. But like I see this more with XRP than anything else, and the worst thing is I see it gain traction because some of the accounts that are doing it are fairly reputable. By the way, here's Deaton saying, this is how a settlement happens, blah, blah, blah. What he's talking about is that basically this is an unconfirmed source. Sounds like someone was wanting to orchestrate a pump. You see this all the time, this market manipulation of XRP, and it's nuts. It is really, really nuts how often this is happening. So when you've got like big people in the know like Deaton and so forth coming out being like, hey, this is junk, you guys. We gotta start working on that quite a bit. I mean, that is just bad garbage for XRP. In fact, I did a story a couple days ago about someone doing an unconfirmed source is said that Ripple and the SEC were going to meet, and I'm sitting here going, come on. Like, where are people coming up with this garbage? And like the buyback, I remember I got, and you guys know this, okay? You guys know this, all right? I just saw a FedNow XRP video. Thank you. But seriously, think about this concept, okay? Think of all the people that commented that were like, yo, 40,000 buyback, Klaus, you're an idiot. And I'm sitting here going, dude, I don't think I'm an idiot on this. And I kept looking and researching, and then all of a sudden it's proven that the $40,000 buyback was just a big scam. You had even Ripple's own CTO coming out being like, yo, this is crap. Do not do this. So it's very weird that you have people that are very hell-bent on believing these things, and you can't find any proof or realism, validation behind it. And then all of a sudden you find out it's a scam, and it's like you're finding this out more and more and more and more, that like the stuff that's out there, right? The junk that's out there, especially with XRP, is nuts, man. I mean, yeah, Glenn just made a comment. Glenn says, I'm only taking news from Deaton. Seriously, the rest is just entertainment. Yeah, it's a madhouse, man. Like, this is the furthest from professional that I have ever seen in my life, like regarding something. And this like action like this pushes a lot of like legitimate money away. Not that there's a difference between legitimate and illegitimate money. They're both green and they both can buy you a fucking Snickers bar at the local bodega. But legitimate money, you guys know what I'm talking about. But seriously, that does keep people away. Like all this FUD generation stuff. DeFi Joker says, lawyers know the law, and that's about it. DeFi Joker, lawyers always win. How much popularity has Deaton gotten? How many more cases has Deaton gotten with all this free advertising? Lawyers always win. I don't care if he's taken this case or any other case pro bono. There are people coming to his office where he's like, I don't have to pro bono these people. I could totally rack them on fees. And he's getting free. Lawyers always win. Plain and simple. Lawyers always win. In 11 minutes, we've got Jerome Powell coming up on the mic. Will he be hawkish? Glenn says also Shiba has a lot of FUD going on. That's a good point, Glenn. And I think that's where people are getting really put off with this stuff. because there is just lots and lots of garbage out there, and you have to get through it. And that's why I really found it interesting that gold all of a sudden, is looking like gold. People are trying to play with it here, testing 245. I like it. But that gold popped first, and so far that's been the only thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've seen silver move a little too. But we saw the move yesterday. It has not translated to digital assets yet. There has not been a breakout move. This here, the move in gold can pull a lot of capital out of the market in cryptos and move it to precious metals. You could definitely see a rally because people are following the rally, just like they're following PayPay coin, right? Just like they're following whatever the next flashiest thing is. Tribalism. Yeah, tribalism. That's a good way to put it. Very much tribalism. Riddlers. Yeah, thank you, DeFi Joker. I appreciate that. So, I think that's something that they're dummism. Thank you, Brad. And that's what holds, though, a lot of legitimate money back. Now, I'll be open with everyone here. I don't give a if your money's legitimate or not. Your green is as valuable to me as the next person's. I don't care how you earn your money, as long as you earn your money doesn't affect my family. All right? So green is green. But there's a lot of, legitimate money, softer money. And by softer, I mean less risk. Okay? That's what I'm saying, that less risk worth, right? That stays away from crypto because of all this junk that's here. Whales don't stay quiet. And you're noticing, too, that you're seeing a lot of things just following momentum and leaving. A lot of people are playing those moves in volume. And they're just, but who's drumming it up? And I think that's what I want to start thinking about. Or us to start thinking about. Who's drumming it up? Who are the people out there that are saying all this kind of stuff? Right? Who are the ones saying that all this? Like, this came from Blockchain Daily. Right? I mean, so now, honestly, anything coming from Blockchain Daily, you're like, yeah. Okay. Yeah, what do we pick here? So, I don't know, you guys. I mean, let me know what you think. I mean, let me know what your thoughts are. We got 9 minutes until Jerome Powell comes on the mic. Till then, like I said, this is your show. But right now, you've got XRP sitting at 45.6. You got XLM at 9.2. So you can see the market is in the green, right? This was priced in. We knew we were going to get hit by a quarter, right? We knew 25 basis points was the hit. Now we're looking, hey, we're probably going to start pricing in the pause. Pricing in the pause will lead us to more green. But we're not going to price the pause in until we hear from Jerome Powell and the Fed, and that's coming up in 8 minutes. DeFi Joker says, same with XLM. Most hold very little. Most people hold very, very little. They're used as utility wallets, not stores of value. And that's where your big difference with gold and these digital assets are, is that gold still pulls on people as stores of value. So as banks become very risky, gold becomes more attractive. All right? If there's all this FUD and you still have all this fear in crypto of, hey, not being enough liquidity and so forth, where do you think money is going to go? They're not going to go to the super risky part, especially meltdown after meltdown after meltdown. They're going to put it to more of all the safer side of things. The Blockchain Finance and Value channel says, I'm tired of all these Ripple setting meeting lies. Utter BS. Only Judge Torres knows. And it's true. It is true. Okay, it's there's so much of it. It is, and what hurts me a lot is that a lot of the people that make the comments on the videos that are fairly negative are the ones that are fully into the hopium train. They're fully into the hype train, man. They're believing so crazy on just the funkiest of things that you're like, what the hell is going on? And it's bad because they're seriously, like, the number of people that have gotten screwed with these scams is nuts. It is just nuts, man. XRP is definitely risky. XRP is definitely risky. And the reason XRP is risky because if you can't tie direct usage of a product with like a supply and demand metric, that is very replaceable. And replaceable, not, I know what DeFi Joker is talking more about the utility of replacement, but if supply and demand doesn't make sense with price, and there's really nothing about utility that is moving supply and demand, right? Where you can actually see and tie those together as like a factor, then what happens is people start calculating that out, and they calculate it out as a high risk. And then once it gets calculated as a high risk, they compare it to other peers in that table, and they just combine the numbers to it. And then all of a sudden they see that that becomes a more riskier outlier. So yes, do you put money in a riskier outlier? Sure. If you got $100, right? Maybe you put $5 in the risky outlier, the other 95 of it in more traditional, considerable growth stuff. So that's where you kind of see it, all right? That's where risky comes into play. They are doing it against their peers. Let's see. The marketing general says XLM will melt faces once it takes off. Yes, anything that takes off will definitely melt faces. Jason Vitorino says, do you think XLM was the backup plan, or is there even something that can compete on the same level as XRP? Compete is very relative, okay? And here's why. You can have... I don't want to, get a weird analogy here, but you can have two different things, two different cars, right? One car is super high performance, track-based. The other car is hybrid, eco machine, 1 liter diesel turbo, you know what I mean? Something like that. Both excellent in their respective fields, right? The track car would destroy the diesel around the track, but the diesel would be getting, way cheaper cost of ownership. So you have that between the two. They are different products, and they are different partnerships in different alignments. So, when I look at it, it's more about that. They're cars, but they're cars with different uses. So yeah, you could kind of compare them on the road together, but one is going to be better and the other is going to be better. And I hope that had helped that out. I want to make sure that my analogies are legit. So, yeah, and that's exactly, Brad. And that's why, seriously, I got so tired of Twitter, because when you started reading this stuff, it was like, oh my gosh, when are we going on the boat? Oh my gosh, when are we going to do it? And you're just sitting here going, if you guys want to talk about mooning, you have to talk about the business that makes moon money happen. Unless you're playing meme. If you're playing meme, then no, that doesn't matter. But mooning, right? If you talk about that, what product out there declares moon usage, moon utility? What product out there is so good that things deserve moon status right now? There's not. Because if there was, or if there was a partnership, or if there was a use case, or if there was a correlation between usage, the products would have mooned, right? So you could tell right now the market is not picking out their winner yet. The market is definitely not picking out their winner. Homie288 says, I think the SEC case against Ripple holding back XRP, I think the price will pump after the case is over. The thing is, what's happening with the SEC is holding it back, essentially, okay? What's happening with the SEC is it's holding back potential growth. It's holding back capital investment. It's holding back boosted turbo diesel all the way. Thank you, Hans. Hans knows what I'm talking about. Dude, seriously, it's so cool. The German versions of the US cars that we have are way cooler in Germany in terms of eco diesel and sport mode and all that kind of stuff. Seriously, it's really cool. I love it when I go over there. But anyways, hold on, let me see. With MoneyGram jumping out of bed with XRP, then jumping into XLM, I understand what you're getting out on, calls. Big ups on the breakdown. Yeah, and that's the thing. You need a product or a use case that really works. You know how Solana did the phone? Did you really need a blockchain phone? You know what I'm saying? Did you really need a blockchain phone? I don't need a blockchain phone. That doesn't solve a problem. My phone being solved by blockchain doesn't help. You know what I mean? Legendary Bullfrog says, what's up, Klaus? Always a pleasure to hear from you, my brother. What's up, Legendary Bullfrog? Glad that you could join us, by the way, on the stream, and thank you for commenting. So, that's how I'm looking at it right now. I don't think there's a product out there that really just like shakes the market going, you know what, this is the game changer. Now, that being said, that's a really good thing. That is a really, really good thing, because that means there's hopes for anyone to make it. But just there's no winner right now in the market. There is no product out there that's killing it. There is no crypto company out there that is doing something better than their competitors, because otherwise you would see a lot more reflection. You would see a lot more supply and demand based tie-ins. Oh, here we go, guys. I'm going to mute this here. Let me know, Jerome. Hold on, until Jerome goes on the mic, I'll keep yapping my face off. Solana phone is just merchandise. Yeah, exactly. Like, you didn't need it. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need an a crypto phone. Just like I don't need blockchain gaming, all right? Seriously, Modern Warfare sucks balls enough where you buy a game and it's only good for like a month where people play it and then the hype runs out. I don't need a blockchain version of that, which like microtranses me to death. Like, I guess that's my thing. Like, seriously, in blockchain gaming, like metaverse stuff, the graphics still suck ass. That's why it's not taking off. Because in the real world, I can still do whatever the hell I want and act like I'm in the metaverse, you know? Oh, here's Jerome. Daddy's here. Say hi.
Good afternoon. Before discussing today's meeting, let me comment briefly on recent developments in the banking sector. Conditions in that sector have broadly improved since early March, and the U.S. banking system is sound and resilient. We will continue to monitor conditions in the sector. We're committed to learning the right lessons from this episode, and will work to prevent events like these from happening again. As a first step in that process, last week we released Vice Chair for Supervision Barr's review of the Federal Reserve's supervision and regulation of Silicon Valley Bank. The review's findings underscore the need to address our rules and supervisory practices to make for a stronger and more resilient banking system, and I'm confident that we will do so. From the perspective of monetary policy, our focus remains squarely on our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. My colleagues and I understand the hardship that high inflation is causing, and we remain strongly committed to bringing inflation back down to our 2% goal. Price stability is the responsibility of the Federal Reserve. Without price stability, the economy does not work for anyone. In particular, without price stability, we will not achieve a sustained period of strong labor market conditions that benefit all. Today, the FOMC raised its policy interest rate by a 1/4 percentage point. Since early last year, we've raised interest rates by a total of 5 percentage points in order to attain a stance of monetary policy that is sufficiently restrictive to return inflation to 2% over time. We are also continuing to reduce our securities holdings. Looking ahead, we'll take a data-dependent approach in determining the extent to which additional policy firming may be appropriate. I will have more to say about today's monetary policy actions after briefly reviewing economic developments. The U.S. economy slowed significantly last year, with real GDP rising at a below-trend pace of 0.9%. The pace of economic growth in the first quarter of this year continued to be modest at 1.1%, despite a pickup in consumer spending. Activity in the housing sector remains weak, largely reflecting higher mortgage rates. Higher interest rates and slower output growth also appear to be weighing on business fixed investment. The labor market remains very tight. Over the first 3 months of the year, job gains averaged 345,000 jobs per month. The unemployment rate remained very low in March at 3.5%. Even so, there are some signs that supply and demand in the labor market are coming back into better balance. The labor force participation rate has moved up in recent months, particularly for individuals aged 25 to 54 years. Nominal wage growth has shown some signs of easing, and job vacancies have declined so far this year. But overall, labor demand still substantially exceeds the supply of available workers. Inflation remains well above our longer run goal of 2%. Over the 12 months ending in March, total PCE prices rose 4.2%. Excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 4.6%. Inflation has moderated somewhat since the middle of last year. Nonetheless, inflation pressures continue to run high, and the process of getting inflation back down to 2% has a long way to go. Despite elevated inflation, longer-term inflation expectations appear to remain well anchored, as reflected in a broad range of surveys of households, businesses, and forecasters, as well as measures from financial markets. The Fed's monetary policy actions are guided by our mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. My colleagues and I are acutely aware that high inflation imposes significant hardship as it erodes purchasing power, especially for those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation. We are highly attentive to the risks that high inflation poses to both sides of our mandate, and we are strongly committed to returning inflation to our 2% objective. At today's meeting, the committee raised the target range for the federal funds rate by a 1/4 percentage point, bringing the target range to 5 to 5.25%. And we're continuing the process of significantly reducing our securities holdings. With today's action, we have raised interest rates by 5 percentage points in a little more than a year. We are seeing the effects of our policy tightening on demand in the most interest rate sensitive sectors of the economy, particularly housing and investment. It will take time, however, for the full effects of monetary restraint to be realized, especially on inflation. In addition, the economy is likely to face further headwinds from tighter credit conditions. Credit conditions had already been tightening over the past year or so in response to our policy actions and a softer economic outlook. But the strains that emerged in the banking sector in early March appear to be resulting in even tighter credit conditions for households and businesses. In turn, these tighter credit conditions are likely to weigh on economic activity, hiring, and inflation. The extent of these effects remains uncertain. In light of these uncertain headwinds, along with monetary policy restraint we've put in place, our future policy actions will depend on how events unfold. In determining the extent to which additional policy firming may be appropriate to return inflation to 2% over time, the committee will take into account the cumulative tightening of monetary policy, the lags with which monetary policy affects economic activity and inflation, and economic and financial developments. We will make that determination meeting by meeting based on the totality of incoming data and their implications for the outlook for economic activity and inflation. And we are prepared to do more if greater monetary policy restraint is warranted. We remain committed to bringing inflation back down to our 2% goal and to keep our longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Reducing inflation is likely to require a period of below-trend growth and some softening of labor market conditions. Restoring price stability is essential to set the stage for achieving maximum employment and stable prices over the longer run. To conclude, we understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. We at the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Gina.
Hi, Gina Smilik, New York Times. Thanks for taking our questions. I wonder if you could tell us whether we should read the statement today as a suggestion that the committee is prepared to pause interest rate increases in June. And I also wonder if the Fed staff has in any way revised their forecast for a mild recession from the March minutes. And if so, what a recession like what they're envisioning would look and feel like when it comes to, for example, the unemployment rate.
So, taking your question, of course, today our decision was to raise the federal funds rate by 25 basis points. A decision on a pause was not made today. You will have noticed that in the statement from March, we had a sentence that said the committee anticipates that some additional policy firming may be appropriate. That sentence is not in the statement anymore. We took that out, and instead we're saying that in determining the extent to which additional policy firming may be appropriate to return inflation at 2% over time, the committee will take into account certain factors. So that's a meaningful change, that we're no longer saying that we anticipate. And so we'll be driven by incoming data, meeting by meeting, and we'll approach that question at the June meeting. So the staff's forecast is, so let me start by saying that that's not my own most likely case, which is really that the economy will continue to grow at a modest rate this year. And I think that's, so different people in the committee have different forecasts. That's my own assessment of the most likely path. Staff produces its own forecast, and it's independent of the forecasts of the participants, which include the governors and the Reserve Bank presidents, of course. And we think this is a healthy thing, that the staff is writing down what they really think. They're not especially influenced by what the governors think, and vice versa. The governors are not taking what the staff says and just writing that down. So it's actually good that the staff and individual participants can have different perspectives. So broadly, the forecast was for a mild recession, and by that I would characterize as one in which the rise in unemployment is smaller than has been typical in modern era recessions. I wouldn't want to characterize the staff's forecast for this meeting. We'll leave that to the minutes, but broadly similar to that.
Rachel. Thank you, Chair Powell. Rachel Siegel from the Washington Post. Thanks for taking our questions. I'm wondering if you can talk about the account of possible effects of a debt limit standoff. You've said repeatedly that the ceiling must be raised, but do you see any economics effects of even getting close to a default, and what type of situation would that look like?
So I wouldn't want to speculate specifically, but I will say this. These are fiscal policy matters, for starters, and they're for Congress and the administration, for the elected parts of the government to deal with, and they're really consigned to them. From our standpoint, I would just say this. It's essential that the debt ceiling be raised in a timely way so that the U.S. government can pay all of its bills when they're due. A failure to do that would be unprecedented. We'd be in uncharted territory, and the consequences to the U.S. economy would be highly uncertain and could be quite averse. So I'll just leave it there. We don't give advice to either side. We just would point out that it's very important that this be done. And the other point I'll make about that, though, is that no one should assume that the Fed can protect the economy from the potential, short and long-term effects of a failure to pay our bills on time. It would be so uncertain that it's just as important that we never get to a place where we're actually talking about or even having a situation where the U.S. government's not paying its bills.
And just to follow up, was discussion around the uncertainty of a possible standoff, did that affect today's monetary policy decision at all?
I wouldn't say that it did. It was, of course, it's something that came up. We talk a lot about risks to the outlook, and that come up. A number of people did raise that as a risk to the outlook. I wouldn't say that it was important in today's monetary policy decision yet.
Chairman, thank you. Steve Leisman, CNBC. Can you tell us what the Federal Reserve Board did in the wake of that February presentation where you were informed that Silicon Valley Bank and other banks were experiencing interest rate risks? And can you tell me what supervisory actions you've done in the wake of the recent bank failures to make sure that banks are currently appropriately managing interest rate risk? And kind of part three, but it's all the same question here. Do you still think this separation principle, that monetary policy and supervision can be handled with different tools? Thank you.
Sure. So the February 14th presentation, I didn't remember it very well, but now, of course, I've gone back and looked at it very carefully. I did remember it. And what it was a general presentation. It was an informational briefing of the whole board, the entire board. I think all members were there. And it was about interest rate risk in the banks and lots of data. And there was one page on Silicon Valley Bank which talked about the amount of losses mark-to-market losses they had in their portfolio. There was nothing in it about, that I recall anyway, about the risk of a bank run. So it was, I think the takeaway was they were going away to do an assessment a horizontal assessment of banks. It wasn't it wasn't presented as an urgent or alarming situation. It was presented as an informational, non-decisional kind of a thing, and I thought it was a good presentation, and as I said, did remember it. In terms of what we're doing, of course, I think banks themselves are many banks are now are attending to liquidity and taking opportunity now, really since the events of early March, to build liquidity. You asked about the separation principle. Like so many things, it's very useful, but ultimately it has its limits. I mean, I think in this particular case, we have found that the monetary policy tools and the financial stability tools are not in conflict. They're working well together. We've used our financial stability tools to support banks through our lending facilities. And at the same time, we've been able to use our monetary policy tools to foster maximum employment and price stability.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be argumentative, but the staff report said SVB has significant interest rate risk. It said interest rate risk measurements failed at SVB, and it said banks with large unrealized losses face significant safety and soundness risk. Why was that not alarming?
Well, I mean, I didn't say it wasn't alarming. It was, they're pointing out something that they're working on and that they're on the case. That I'm not sure whether they mentioned, I think they did actually. They mentioned that they had taken regulatory action, or supervisory action in the form of matters requiring attention. So I think that was also in the presentation. I think it was to say, yes, this is a bank and there are many other banks that are experiencing these things, and we're on the case.
Thank you.
Go to Victoria.
Hi, Chair Powell. I wanted to ask you, obviously with the recent bank turmoil, we've seen multiple banks buy other banks, and I was just curious whether you think that further consolidation in the banking sector would increase or decrease financial stability, and whether you have any concerns about the biggest bank in the U.S. Getting even larger.
So, we certainly don't, and I don't have an agenda to further consolidate banks. Consolidation has been a factor in the U.S. banking industry really since interstate banking, and before that even. It goes back more than 30 years. When I was in the government a while back, I think there were 14,000 banks. Now there are 4,000 and change. So that's going on. I personally have long felt that having small, medium, and large-sized banks is a great part of our banking system. The community banks serve particular customers very well. Regional banks serve very important purposes, and the various kinds of GSIBs do as well. So I think it's healthy to have a range of different kinds of banks doing different things. I think that's a positive thing. Is it a financial? So I would just say, in terms of J.P. Morgan buying First Republic, the FDIC really runs the process of closing and selling a closed bank completely. That is their role, so I really don't have a comment on that process. As you know, there's an exception to the deposit cap for a failing bank. So it was legitimate, and I think the FDIC, I believe, is bound by law to take the bid that is the least cost bid. So I would assume that's what they did.
So, but do you have any concerns about the fact that they're getting larger in general?
So I think it's probably good policy that we don't want the largest banks doing big acquisitions. That is the policy, and but this is an exception for a failing bank, and I think it's actually a good outcome for the banking system. It also would have been a good outcome for the banking system had one of the regional banks bought this company, and that could have been the outcome. But ultimately, we have to follow the law in our agencies, and the law is it goes to the least cost bid.
Colby.
Thank you. Colby Smith with the Financial Times. At the March meeting, you mentioned that a tightening of credit conditions from the recent bank stress could be equal to one or more rate increases. So given developments since then, how has your estimate changed?
Yeah, I think I followed that up by saying it's quite impossible to have a precise estimate of the words to that effect. But in principle, that's the idea. When we've been raising interest rates, and that raises the price of credit, and that, in a sense, restricts credit in the economy working through the price mechanism. And when banks raise their credit standards, that can also make credit tighter in a kind of broadly similar way. It isn't possible to make a kind of clean translation between one and the other, although firms are trying that, and we're trying it. But ultimately, we have to be honest and humble about our ability to make a precise assessment. So it does complicate the task of achieving a sufficiently restrictive stance. But I think conceptually, though, we think that interest rates, in principle, we won't have to raise rates quite as high as we would have had this not happened. The extent of that is so hard to predict because we don't know how persistent these effects will be. We don't know how large they'll be and how long they'll take to be transmitted, but that's what we'll be watching carefully to find out.
Just to quickly follow up, what does it suggest about the scope for the committee to pause rate increases perhaps as early as next month, even if the data remains strong then, if it's having some kind of substitute effect?
This is just something that we have to factor in as we want to find ourselves. So I guess I would say it this way. The assessment of the extent to which additional policy firming may be appropriate is going to be an ongoing one, meeting by meeting, and we're going to be looking at the factors that I mentioned that are listed in the statement, the obvious factors. That's the way we're going to be thinking about it. That's really all we can do. As I say, it does complicate. We have, a broad understanding of monetary policy. Credit tightening is a different thing. There's a lot of literature on that, but translating it into rate hikes is uncertain. Let's say it adds even further uncertainty. Nonetheless, we'll be able to see what's happening with credit conditions, what's happening with lending. There's a lot of data on that, and we'll factor that into our decision making.
Howard Schneider with Reuters. Thank you. So noting that the statement dropped the reference to sufficiently restrictive, I was wondering, given your baseline outlook, whether you feel this current rate of 5 to 5.25% is in fact sufficiently restrictive.
So that's going to be an ongoing assessment. We're going to need data to accumulate on that. Not an assessment that we've made. That would mean we think we've reached that point, and I just think it's not possible to say that with confidence now. But nonetheless, you will know that the summary of economic projections from the March meeting showed that at that point in time that the median participant thought that this was the appropriate level of the ultimate high level of rates. We don't know that. We'll revisit that at the June meeting, and that's we're just going to have to, before we really declare that, I think we're going to have to see data accumulating and make that, as I mentioned, it's an ongoing assessment.
And a follow-up on credit, if I could you give us a sense of what the SLUICE survey indicated? It was already, I think 45% of banks were tightening credit as of the last survey. What did this one show, and how did that weigh into your deliberations?
So we're going to release the results of the SLUICE on May 8th, in line with our usual time frame. And I would just say that the SLUICE is broadly consistent when you see it with how we and others have been thinking about the situation and what we're seeing from other sources. You will have seen the Beige Book and listened to the various earnings calls that indicate that mid-sized banks some of them have been tightening their lending standards. Banking data will show that lending has continued to grow, but the pace has been slowing really since the second half of last year.
Go to Nick.
Nick Timmeros of the Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, the argument around the end of last year and the beginning of this year to slow down the pace of increases was to give yourself time to study the effects of those moves. After the bank failures in March, as you've discussed, the Fed staff projected a recession starting later this year. So my question is why it was necessary to raise interest rates today, or put differently, if the whole point of slowing down the pace was to see the effects of your moves, and now you've, for the last 2 meetings, been seeing the effects of those moves. Why did the committee feel it was necessary to keep moving?
Well, the reason is that again, with our monetary policy, we're trying to reach and then stay at for an extended period, a level of policy stance that's sufficiently restrictive to bring inflation down to 2% over time. And that's what we're trying to do with our tool. I think slowing down was the right move. I think it's enabled us to see more data, and it will continue to do so. So we really, we have to balance. We always have to balance the risk of not doing enough and not getting inflation under control against the risk of maybe slowing down economic activity too much. And we thought that this rate hike, along with the meaningful change in our policy statement, was the right way to balance that.
And just to follow up, what you said in response to Howard's question, you'll need data to accumulate to determine if this is a sufficiently restrictive stance. Does that data need to accumulate, or could it accumulate over a longer period than a 6-week intermeeting cycle?
As I mentioned, I would just say that this assessment will be an ongoing one. You can't, with economic data, you can't. You've seen, take inflation from it. Look back. We've seen inflation come down, move back up 2 or 3 times since March of 2021. We've seen inflation have a few months of coming down and then come right back up. So I think you're going to want to see that, that a few months of data will persuade you that you've got this right, kind of thing. And we have the luxury. We've raised 500 basis points. I think that policy is tight. I think real rates are probably, you can calculate them many different ways, but one way is to look at the nominal rate and then subtract a reasonable estimate of let's say 1-year inflation, which might be 3%. So you've got 2% real rates. That's meaningfully above what most people many people anyway, would assess as the neutral rate. So policy is tight, and you see that in interest-sensitive activities, and you also begin to see it more and more in other activities. And if you put the credit tightening on top of that and the QT that's ongoing, I think you feel like we may not be far off, or possibly even at that level.
Thank you very much, Chair Powell. Edward Lawrence with Fox Business. So if the Federal Reserve gets down to the 3% inflation, as the projections show at the end of this year, or close to it, would it be okay for you for a prolonged period of 3% inflation and hoping for some outside event to move down to 2% target?
I think we're always going to have 2% as our target. We're always going to be focusing on getting there.
Would be okay with a prolonged 3%?
It's. Let me just say that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for inflation going down to 2% over time. I mean, that's not a question that's in front of us, and it would depend on so many other things. But ultimately, we're not looking to get to 3% and then drop our tools. We have a goal of getting to 2%. We think it's going to take some time. We don't think it'll be a smooth process, and I think we're gonna need to stay at this for a while.
How does the other side of the mandate, the job side, once you get to 3%, going from 3 to 2, how does the other side of the mandate balance?
I think they will both matter equally at that point. Right now, you have a labor market that's still extraordinarily tight. You've still got 1.6 job openings, even with the lower job openings number, for every unemployed person. We do see some evidence of softening in labor market conditions, but overall, you're near a 50-year low in unemployment. Wages, you all will have seen the wage number from late last week, and it's whenever it was, and it's a couple percentage points above what would be consistent with 2% inflation over time. So we do see some softening. We see new labor supply coming in. These are very positive developments, but the labor market is very, very strong. Whereas inflation is running high, well above our goal, and right now we need to be focusing on bringing inflation down. Fortunately, we've been able to do that so far without unemployment going up.
Matt.
Hi, Chair Powell. Matthew Boesler with Bloomberg News. So many analysts noted at the time of the March FOMC meeting that at least half of Fed officials' projections did imply or seem to imply that a recession was in their baseline forecast as well, given the strong first quarter GDP tracking estimates. And so I'm just wondering if you could kind of elaborate on, why you're optimistic that a recession can be avoided, given that that's the Fed staff's forecast, possibly also the broader committee's forecast as well, and also, of course, most private sector forecasters.
Yeah, I don't think, I know what's printed in the Summary of Economic Projections and all that. I don't think you can deduce exactly what you said about what participants think, because you don't know what they were thinking for first quarter GDP at that point. They could have been thinking about a fairly low number. Anyway, in any case, I'll just say I continue to think that it's possible that this time is really different. And the reason is there's just so much excess demand, really, in the labor market. It's interesting, as we've raised rates by 5 percentage points in 14 months, and the unemployment rate is 3.5%, pretty much where it was, even lower than where it was when we started. So job openings are still very, very high. We see by surveys and much evidence that conditions are cooling gradually, but it really is different. It wasn't supposed to be possible for job openings to decline by as much as they've declined without unemployment going up. Well, that's what we've seen. So there are no promises in this, but it just seems to me that it's possible that we can continue to have a cooling in the labor market without having the big increases in unemployment that have gone with many, prior episodes. Now, that would be against history. I fully appreciate that. That would be against the pattern. But I do think that the situation in the labor market with so much excess demand, yet wages have been moving down. Wage increases have been moving down, and that's a good sign, down to more sustainable levels. So I think it's still possible. I think the case of avoiding a recession is, in my view, more likely than that of having a recession. But it's not that the case of having a recession is. I don't rule that out either. It's possible that we will have what I hope would be a mild recession.
The committee also noted in March that wage growth was still well above levels that would be consistent with 2% inflation. Do you see that as well? And could you kind of explain, how you come to that judgment?
Sure. So we look at a range of wage measures, and then that's a nominal. And then so you assume wages should be equal to productivity increases plus inflation. And so you can look at the Employment Compensation Index, average hourly earnings, the Atlanta Wage Tracker, compensation per hour, basically those four and many others, and you can look at what they would have to run at over a long period of time for that to be consistent with 2% inflation. They can deviate. Corporate margins can go up and down, and there is a feature of long expansions where they do go down, where labor gets a bigger share toward later in a recession. Later in an expansion. So, yeah, and we calculate those, and you have to take the precision with a degree of salt. But I would say that what they will show is that, if wages are running at 5%, 3% is closer to where they need to be. Wage increases closer to 3%, roughly, is what it would take to be consistent with inflation over a longer period of time. By the way, I do not think that wages are the principal driver of inflation. You're asking me a very specific question. I think there are many things. I think wages and prices tend to move together, and it's very hard to say what's causing what. But I've never said that that wages are really the principal driver, because I don't think that's really right.
Great. Chris Rugaber at Associated Press. Well, you mentioned profit margins. Those have expanded, did expand sharply during this inflationary period. And while there are some signs that they are starting to decline, many economists note they haven't fallen as much as might be expected, given that we're seeing at least some pullback among consumer spending. So, speaking of causes of inflation, do you see expanded profit margins as a driver of higher prices? And if so, would you expect them to narrow soon and contribute to reduced inflation in the coming months?
So higher profits and higher margins are what happens when you have an imbalance between supply and demand. Too much demand, not enough supply. And we've been in a situation in many parts of the economy where supply has been fixed or not flexible enough. And so, the way the market clears is through higher prices. So I think as goods pipelines have gotten, back to normal so that we don't have the long waits and the shortages and that kind of thing, I think you will see inflation come down, and you'll see corporate margins coming down as a result of a return of full competition where there's enough supply to meet demand, and then you're really back to full competition. That would be the dynamic I would expect.
Michael McKee from Bloomberg Radio and Television. Can you tell us something about what your policy reaction function is, your policy framework is going forward? When you look at the economy at the next meeting, are you looking at incoming data, which is by definition backward looking? Are you going to be forecasting what you think is going to happen? Are you ruling out the rate cuts that the market has priced in?
I didn't catch the last part. Ruling.
Markets have priced in rate cuts by the end of the year. Do you rule that out?
Okay, I got it. So what are we looking at? I mean, we look at a combination of data and forecasts. Of course, the whole idea is to create a good forecast based on what you see in the data. So we're always looking at both, and it will, of course, it'll be the obvious things. It'll be readings on inflation. It'll be readings on wages, on economic growth, on the labor market, and all of those many things. I think a particular focus for us going now over the past 6-7 weeks now, and going forward, is going to be what's happening with credit tightening. Are small and medium-sized banks tightening credit standards, and is that having an effect on loans, on lending? And so we can begin to assess how that fits in with monetary policy. That'll be an important thing. We'll be looking at everything. It's, again, I would just point out, we've raised rates by 5 percentage points. We are shrinking the balance sheet, and now we have credit conditions tightening, not just in the normal way, but perhaps a little bit more due to what's happened. And we have to factor all of that in and make our assessment of whether our policy stance is sufficiently restrictive. And we have to do that in a world where policy works with long and variable lags. So this is challenging, but we will make our best assessment, and that's what we'll be thinking.
What about the idea of rate cuts?
Yeah, so we on the committee have a view that inflation is going to come down, not so quickly, but it'll take some time. And in that world, if that forecast is broadly right, it would not be appropriate to cut rates, and we won't cut rates. If you have a different forecast, and markets have been from time to time pricing in quite rapid reductions in inflation, we'd factor that in, but that's not our forecast. And of course, the history of the last 2 years has been very much that inflation moves down. Particularly now, if you look at non-housing services, it really hasn't moved much, and it's quite stable. And so we think demand will have to weaken a little bit, and labor market conditions may have to soften a bit more to begin to see progress there. And again, in that world, it wouldn't be appropriate for us to cut rates.
Courtney Brown from Axios. I'm curious how you view the role of the overnight reverse repo facility in the context of the current banking stress. Do you think it's contributing to the stress by making it more attractive for money market funds to compete with banks for deposits? And did the committee discuss any changes to the structure of the facility, or do you see that being put on the table in the future? Thanks.
Sure. So we looked at that very carefully, as you would imagine, and it's really not contributing. We don't think now. It hasn't actually been growing. It moved up, it moved down, and then moved back up to where it was. What happened in the when there were the big deposit flows, which by the way have really stabilized now. What happened was institutional investors took their uninsured deposits and put them in government money market funds, which bought paper from the Federal Home Loan banks and things like that. Over the course of maybe the last year, retail investors had been gradually, as they do in every tightening cycle, they've been gradually moving their deposits into higher yielding places such as CDs and other things, including money market funds. So that's a gradual process that is quite natural and happens during a tightening cycle. What was unusual really was the institutional investors moving their uninsured deposits and spreading them around and things like that. But it doesn't seem to have had any effect overall on the overnight repo facility. That is really there to help us keep rates where they're supposed to be, and it's serving that purpose very well.
Sarah.
Sarah Ewald-Weiss, CBS News. I want to go back to the debt ceiling for a moment. I know you talked about that in terms of fiscal policy, but can you just speak towards what the impact of a default would mean for Americans across the country, the markets, and borrowing?
Yeah, I would just say it's. I don't really think we should be. We shouldn't even be talking about a world in which the U.S. doesn't pay its bills. It just shouldn't be a thing. And again, I would just say we don't. No one should assume that the Fed can do. Can really protect the economy and the financial system and our reputation globally from the damage that such an event might inflict.
Scott.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Scott Horsley from NPR. In his report last week, Vice Chair Barr identified a couple of the factors that he thought contributed to the regulatory, or the supervisory lapses at Silicon Valley Bank. A policy change in 2019 to exempt all but the biggest banks from strict scrutiny, and also what he called a sort of cultural shift towards less aggressive oversight. You were here in 2019. Do you share that view, and what would it take to get the stronger oversight that you and he said in your release would be necessary?
So I didn't take part in creating the report or doing the work, but I have read it, of course, and I find it persuasive. I mean, I would say it this way. A large bank, not a very large bank, a large bank failed quite suddenly and unexpectedly in a way that threatened to spread contagion into the financial system. I think the only thing that I'm really focused on is to understand what went wrong, what happened, and identify what we need to do to address that. Some of that is, it may just have been technology evolving, we have to keep up with all that, but some of it may be our policies and supervisory and regulatory, whatever. Well, what our job is now is identify those things and implement them. And that's kind of the only thing I care about and I feel like I am accountable for doing everything I can to make sure that happens.
Thank you. Evan Reiser with MNI Market News. Chair Powell, are we in the early stage or nearing the end stage of the banking turmoil among regional banks? And secondly, do you still have a bias to tighten rates? Is that what the statement is saying?
So, I guess I would say it this way. There were three large banks, really, from the very beginning, that were at the heart of the stress that we saw in early March, the severe period of stress. Those have now all been resolved, and all the depositors have been protected. I think that the resolution and sale of First Republic kind of draws a line under that period is an important step toward drawing a line under that period of severe stress, okay? I also think we are very focused on what's happening with credit availability, particularly, with what you saw in the beige book, and you will see in the SLOOS is small and medium-sized banks who are feeling that they need to tighten credit standards, build liquidity. What's going to be the macroeconomic effect of that? More broadly, we will continue to very carefully monitor what's going on in the banking system, and we'll factor that assessment into our decisions in an important way going forward.
Okay, Greg.
Thank you, Fed Chairman. Greg Robb from Market Watch. I just wondered if you've done any reflection on your own actions during this crisis and leading up to it over the since you've been Fed Chairman. I think I've heard you say a couple of times that you deferred to the Vice Chair for supervision. Do you think that was the right way to go about this? And yeah, comments on that. Thank you.
Sure. So let me say, first of all, I've been chair of the board for 5+ years now, and I fully recognize that we made mistakes. I think we've learned some new things as well, and we need to do better. And as I mentioned, I thought the report was unflinching and appropriately so. I welcome it, and I agree with and will support those recommendations, and I do feel that I'm personally accountable to do what I can to foster measures that will address the problems. So on the Vice Chair for Supervision, the place to start is the statutory role, which is quite unusual. The Vice Chair, it says, shall deploy policy recommendations, develop policy recommendations for the board regarding supervision and regulation of depository institution companies, and shall oversee the supervision and regulation of such firms. So this is Congress establishing a 4-year term for someone else on the board, not the chair, as Vice Chair for Supervision, who really gets to set the agenda for supervision and regulation for the Board of Governors. Congress wanted that person to have political accountability for developing that agenda. So the way it works, the way it has worked in practice for me is I've had a good working relationship. I give my counsel my input privately, and that's, I offer that, and I have good conversations, and I try to contribute constructively. I respect the authority that Congress has deferred on that person, including working with Vice Chair Barr and his predecessor. And I think that's the way it's supposed to work, and that's appropriate. I believe that's what the law requires. And, but it isn't, I wouldn't say it's a matter of complete deference. It's more, I have a role in presenting my views and discussing, having an intelligent discussion about what's going on and why, and that's my input. But ultimately, that person does get to set the agenda and gets to take things to the Board of Governors, and really in supervision has sole authority over supervision.
Just wondered if you had any regrets, or was there anything that, decisions that maybe you regret now in light of what's happened?
I've had a few. Sure. I mean, who doesn't look back and think that you could have done things differently? But honestly, you don't get to do that. Again, my focus is on control the controllable. As one of my great mentors used to always say, control the controllable. What we control now is make a fair assessment, learn the right lessons, figure out what the fixes are, and implement them. And I think that Vice Chair Barr's report is an excellent first step in that, but we've got to follow through.
Hi there, Megan Casella with Barron's. Did the possibility of pausing at this meeting come up at all, and how seriously was that considered? I'm curious if you can give us any color as to whether there were any initial concerns about raising rates again, or what those discussions entailed.
So support for the 25 basis point rate increase was very strong across the board. I would say there are a number of people, and you'll see this in the minutes. I don't want to try to do the head count in real time, but people did talk about pausing, but not so much at this meeting. There's a sense that we're much closer to the end of this than to the beginning. That, as I mentioned, if you add up all the tightening that's going on through various channels, we feel like we're getting close, or maybe even there. But that, again, that's going to be an ongoing assessment, and we're going to be looking at those factors that we listed in to determine whether there's more to do.
I'm curious too how to interpret that and the changes to the statement. Is the bar higher now to raise rates at the next meeting, or would a strong jobs report or inflation print be enough to push the Fed to tighten again?
I don't want to. I couldn't really say. I just think I think we've moved a long way fairly quickly, and I think we can afford to look at the data and make a careful assessment.
And we'll go to Nancy for the last question.
Hi, Chair Powell. Nancy Marshall-Genzer with Marketplace. You mentioned a few times about the lessons you learned from the banking crisis, that you would learn the right lessons. What are those lessons?
Well, I just would start with something that's changed, really, which is the run on Silicon Valley Bank was out of keeping with the speed of runs through history. And that now needs to be reflected in some way in regulation and in supervision. We know now that we know it's possible. I think no one thought that was possible. No one had. I'm not aware of anybody thinking that this could happen quite so quickly. So I think that, that will play through. It will be up to Vice Chair Barr to really take the lead in designing the ways to address that. But I think that's one thing. I guess I would just say that. Then we're gonna revisit. It's pretty clear to me anyway. It's clear that we need to strengthen both supervision and regulations for banks of this size, and I'm thinking that we're on track to do that as well.
Can you be any more specific on stress testing or looking at banks that have specific concentrations in certain parts of the economy?
Yeah, that's what Vice Chair Barr's role really is, and he'll take the lead on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jerome Powell. Oh my gosh. All right, so let's put a little summary on here. In Doge Lumens in the house. Hello, Doge. Shadow Smith in the house as well. Let's put a summary on things, all right? Let's do this. Essentially, the market did price in the 25 hit. The market also appeared to have priced in somewhat of a pause or a lean to a pause in the next meeting. The problem is Jerome Powell's tone, his comments, and even the fact, even the fact that he said, you know what, I don't care if we're at 3%, we got to get to 2%. Even comments like that and the facts like that tell us that we got to worry in June. I think he's digging his heels in deep to get inflation down fast. At the expense, I know, I get it, at the expense of honestly the American consumer, high rates and so forth. Sorry, I'm just processing just everything as I go through this. But we're looking at this going that Jerome Powell is on straight like mode to kill, man. He is geared in, locked, and ready. Right now, you're looking at money being very expensive for a long time. With money being expensive, rates being high, that makes it very hard for crypto to pop. How can crypto pop, right, if we're not going to get regs from the U.S. government in 2023? We won't. I'd bet a huge chunk of money on that if anyone wants to set up a prop bet. We will not get crypto regs in 2023. We'll be lucky if we get stablecoin regs. 2024 is an election year, so they're not going to do that. 2025, it's like, oh, crap. All right. So what we're learning here is that money is going to be expensive. Jerome Powell has, up until the election of next year, to completely put his foot on the throat of the economy. He is going to do what he has to do to get it down to 2.0. A pause doesn't matter. He wants to see the data. And what got us more than anything was we went from a 6 to a 5. That's a delta of 1. That is a huge move down. Huge move down. Now, he even said, look, this doesn't matter. I'm going to keep bringing the heat until we get there. So even if we were to get like a 4.0, it sounds like Jerome Powell and the Fed are going to be like, look, we've got more to come. We got more to come. This was very hawkish. This was very negative of a meeting from Jerome Powell and the Fed. Very, very negative. And it's going to take time for people to digest this. It's going to take time for it to have translation services and so forth. But this was not what we wanted to hear. I mean, this was not what we wanted to hear. Long term, this pushes the window far out. And not only does it push the window far out, it confirms the idea that short-term action has to deal with liquidity. And there is no liquidity right now. In fact, we're very cautiously watching what UK central banks are going to do. Because most likely the UK central banks are going to have to come and drop a 50 basis point hit. PD Pure, entry supporter, everyone thank PD Pure. And also please give PD Pure a big shout out because PD Pure has been like rocking it with these live streams, man. Rocking it. Justin Hayes says, tune in, what's the damage? The damage is a 25 basis point hit from Jerome Powell and the Fed. But with the idea that he's just going to keep dropping more. I mean, the pause, the idea of taking a pause is now going to be very, very different. All right? It's going to be very, very different. Let me swap on over to June. All right. I'm going to be watching this here. This is going to be very interesting because honestly, you now have the idea that people are going to start pricing in another hit in June. Man, this is nuts. This is really, really nuts. And honestly, it was, yeah, exactly. Cisco Guru says it right. Yep, he seems hell-bent on 2%. Yeah, and it's not that it's 2%, right? I think we've known, and thank you for bringing that up, Cisco Guru. We've known that 2% is the target, but it was how aggressive he wants to get there. He wants to get there fast. He wants to drop the bombs quick. He wants us to straight up get there. And part of the problem is this. Part of the problem is if we still have high inflation happening elsewhere in the world that has a lag effect that does have a spillover to U.S. markets, which means the Fed may have to be overly hawkish to thwart some of the external pricing factors that can creep into U.S. marketplaces. This is definitely a more hawkish Jerome Powell than we saw. Definitely more Jerome Powell hawkish than what we saw, everyone. So I guess that's something that we're going to have to think about is, does CPI data now, does it have any weight? Does it have any bearing? And obviously it has weight and bearing, but does it, even if we get something juicy, does it matter? Or is Jerome Powell hell-bent on getting it down to 2.0? Yeah, Shadow Smith chimes in and says, I suspect the UK is going to do the exact same here and continue for the foreseeable future. Something else must be going on. It's the problem here, Smith, is that companies are taking high profits right now, okay? Yes, things are expensive, but they're passing that all on to the consumer. And a lot of it is inflated. It's overinflated, right? They're over the top. When companies have record profits during times where their expenses are really high, that means they're really passing it on to the consumer. Now, what's interesting about this here, though, is that the UK has inflation worse and a delayed time effect. So UK is much more in the red zone right now than the US, right? Because their inflation hit them later. Smith, my worry here is that you're going to see the UK come in with a 50 if we're not careful, man. And the other issue is that the UK has is UK housing is way out of control compared to the United States. So there's that monster we have to deal with too. I'm more nervous right now about the UK than anything, and the reason is it's because of how much worse their inflation hit them. Also, their economy is very resilient, but it doesn't have the depth of layers, right? It doesn't have that same depth of layers. It's good, but it doesn't have the depth of layers. And when you start dealing with this inflation that just goes out of control, you start testing those depths of layers. You start testing the fabric of people, their savings, their ability to save, their ability to earn a wage, their ability to keep up with inflation. So you start testing these different levels, right, of the UK economic dynamic in a much more amplified sense than the US. That is a definite danger. Because if we see massive problems with the UK, you're going to have massive issues that can spread to the rest of Europe and the rest of the world. And that's why I think the UK, you're going to see a 50. I'm leaning personally on a 50 for the UK. It's a little bold on the call. I get it right now to see a 50 at this stage in the game. But the UK is almost like 6 months-ish behind us, 6, 7, 8 months behind us. Energy prices as well. Yeah, that's the other thing. The UK's got high energy prices. Shadow Smith, same with the U.S., man. Shadow Smith brought up a great comment. Shadow Smith says, we're practically in a service industry here, Klaus. We produce very little. That's so true. That is so true in the United States. We are very service-based, and we're also very based on consumerism, right? The U.S., the market dynamic is based on a high turnover of goods, consumerism, and that's very dangerous. Ashley says over 100% rise on electric. Yeah, and that's where the fear is, because Ashley, these things are, for the UK residents, it seems it's way worse than the U.S. And I'll be honest with you, Ashley. So we hit inflation worse than you in terms of price sooner, right? When we hit it at the peak, it was rough. Knowing now that you're getting this inflation, you're getting it harder than we did here in the States. And it seems like a longer time period. The U.S. inflation's kind of coming down quicker, but the U.K. is kind of dragging out. It's a little flatter of a down curve. That is very scary. I mean, it's just, it's rough, man. It's very, very rough. So yeah, big inflation concerns going on here. But what we're going to do is this. We're going to end the stream in 5 minutes, 3:35 Eastern time. We're going to end it in 5 minutes. I got a few things I got to tackle while the sun is still out. But the big story for the day is Jerome Powell coming out, here you go, to support these goals. The committee decided to raise the target range 25 basis points. Yeah, it's government spending, guys. This is really what it comes down. Government spending out of control. We need to tighten up the spending to protect the consumer, because right now, these interest rates are going to just destroy the consumer. Ooh, stagnation. Actually, that's the truth. UK is looking at stagnation, no movement, just constantly high. We're also looking at that in the United States, but not as bad. Like I said, that's why I feel worse for the UK viewers, because you guys have it way worse on your plate. The reality is the UK viewership right now, and Europe in general, I'll be honest with you, Europe is having it way worse. Way worse than what we did in the United States. And in the United States, it was rough, man. Legendary says, when I was going through college in the 90s, they were teaching the USA going into the service economy was a good idea. Nico says, have to bounce. Take care, all, and thank you, Klaus, for the stream. Thank you, Nico, for the continuous support. I appreciate it, sir. You know that. And take care for the rest of your day, too, Nico. Make sure you have some fun. When I was in school in the 90s, same thing. I did hear a lot about service economy. But I thought that was because of the schools that I attended were very big on producing jobs for the service economy. So for me, I always thought that was like a bias of the schools that I went to. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm realizing it wasn't, quote, just the schools I went to. It was the actual whole economic system. That the teachers out there were teaching service, not production, because a lot of them saw as production being dead, and it just pushed everything out. So, yeah, it's a very tough situation that people are going through right now. I'm glad that we get together and share this stuff and talk about it, because talking about this really helps. I know I get a lot of, not closure, but I get a lot of like the emotions off my chest being able to share things with all of you. So for me, these live streams help, because when I see Jerome Powell out here coming out with another quarter hit, you got to remember, like, I have kids too. I have a family too, right? So that means, hey, if you need to buy a car, guess what? Car loans just went up a quarter. Hey, you need to buy a house, home loans just went up a quarter. I've got 2 daughters who are on their own. I've got a daughter who's got a kid, so a grandchild for me. So these are things that I'm definitely dealing with here, and I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it spread. Yeah. Oh, man. Glenn says, Klaus, have a good day. After all, see you next stream. Thanks a lot. Yeah, thank you, Glenn. I appreciate it. Whew, man. But yeah, it was like a script they were reading. No, it's true. And that's, Smith, I don't mean to be, I don't want to go down like the conspiracy hole rabbit theory. Nothing, you know what I mean? Like tinfoil hat action. I don't want to go crazy on you here. But like, there definitely was an agenda that was pushed through the school systems. And that agenda turned out a generation of worker and actually a couple generations of worker and a couple generations of people where their social views really heavily impacted the economic vibe and flow of the world. And we're seeing that right now. And I really thought it was maybe more isolated to the schooling systems that I went to, especially based on where I live. But now I'm realizing that was pretty much everywhere. I mean, definitely everywhere. All right, everyone, here's what we are going to do. I'm going to start playing some tunes. Just charge it to my Diners card. Jesse Martinez rocking it in. Thank you, Jesse, for the inside joke. I appreciate that. I need those smiles and inside jokes just like the next person. So, Jesse, thank you. By the way, Jesse, my Diners Club card goes in my chest pocket of my members only jacket. Do you like that one? Oh, man. Oh, gosh. All right, everyone, here's the deal. I'm going to play some tunes. I am going to rock on out of here. I got some stuff to do. Please, please say goodbye to each other in the chat because we're all hanging out together. You guys have made a lot of cool friends and stuff like that. So, everyone, thank you so much for the stream. I greatly appreciate it. I'm going to play some tunes, leave the heat map up. I'll hang out with you guys in chat. But make sure you cool cats. Have a great rest of your day.
But I don't